A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John chapter 7, verses 40 to 53. Passage taken from the Message version of the Bible. Those in the crowd who heard these words were saying, "This has to be the prophet." Others said, "He is the Messiah." But others were saying, "The Messiah doesn't come from Galilee, does he? Don't the scriptures tell us that the Messiah comes from the David's line and from Bethlehem, David's village?" So there was a split in the crowd over him. Some went so far as wanting to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him. That's when the temple police reported back to the high priests and Pharisees, who demanded, "Why didn't you bring him with you?" The police answered, "Have you heard the way he talks? We have never heard anyone speaks like this man." The Pharisees said, "Are you carried away like the rest of the rabble? You don't see any of the leaders believing in him, do you? Or any from the Pharisees? It's only this crowd, ignorant of God's law, that is taken in by him and damned." Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus earlier and was both a ruler and a Pharisee, spoke up. "Does our law decide about a man's guilt without first listening to him and finding out what he is doing?" But they cut him off. "Are you also campaigning for the Galilean? Examine the evidence. See if any prophet ever comes from Galilee." Then they all went home. The Gospel of the Lord. Reflections on the Gospel according to John chapter 7, verses 40 to 53. The Gospel today presents yet another confrontation of Jesus with the ruling class. As we read through, we immediately realize it as all too familiar occurrence of our present times in our society. Invariably, majority of the people in power, be it in the time of Jesus or in the present day, in whichever part of the world they may be, live in fool's paradise, telling themselves that the power and the honor they possess are absolute and eternal. Dictators have ruled nations of the world, and many of them do even today, believing nothing in the universe can overthrow them. This foolish sense of infallibility raises in them a contempt for ordinary people. They discarded common people as illiterate and uneducated. The temple authorities realized that Jesus was a growing nuisance. He had repeatedly questioned their style of observing the Sabbath, and both Jesus and the disciples were accused of breaking the Sabbath law. He welcomed the sinners and the tax collectors, the socially outcast people, into his company and shared meals with them. But what shocked the Pharisees and the high priest most was Jesus raising Lazarus to life. People regarded him as a prophet or the Messiah. The Puritans could not appreciate the openness and mercy that Jesus proposed through his life. They wanted to discredit the popularity of Jesus. Therefore, they assigned the temple police to find faults with his teachings and to arrest him. False accusations, unjust detentions, and unfair trials, and wrong sentencing are nothing uncommon even in our times. Jesus will be captured and killed for raising someone to life. The irony doesn't end there. It will be through his dying, Jesus will give his life to all who come to him. But often, the law enforcement agencies remain helpless before the autocratic power centers. High priests and the Pharisees disdained the temple police because they admired Jesus. In confronting the majority, Nicodemus showed unusual courage. He had initially approached Jesus by night, afraid to identify himself publicly as one intrigued by Jesus. Now he had stepped out from the darkness, courageously choosing to allow himself to be identified, and thereby threatening the closed unanimity of the Pharisee group. he would appear again at the foot of the cross to bury the body of Jesus. The history repeats. The cry of the suffering majority for justice and right to live in dignity are suppressed by the powerful minority. This minority will apparently determine the future of the hapless majority. This is the logic of the world. But the dictators and emperors have disappeared, yet Jesus and his church live, giving God's life to the world.